Now my wife and I are building this carport, and if you haven't seen those videos building this carport, then I will leave a link in the description below, so after this video you can watch those videos. Anyway, I need to do some guttering before I put the roof on, because if I put the roof on first and then the guttering, I can't reach the back because of the bushes, so I need to do it before I do the roof. So before we get on with that, I would just like to talk about health and safety, because in my videos while I've been building this carport, I've been getting slated for all the health and safety issues I do while I'm working. Anyway, I want to talk about working at heights. Now, I'm only working about 7 foot high here, so I can use this nice step ladder to work off. But if you're doing guttering around your roof, your house, if you've got 2-3 stories, then you're going to struggle to work off this step ladder. You're going to need a scaffold. Now my advice would be, do not install guttering off a ladder. Do you know, over the last 3 years, over 120 people have died in the UK from falling from heights? So if you are doing your guttering around the top of your house and it's high up, then get a scaffold. Do not work off a step ladder or an extension ladder. You have been warned. So let's finally get on with it and have a look at how to install guttering. It's the same process whether you're going over a carport or whether you're going round your house. Now, what tools and equipment are we going to need besides a step ladder or a scaffold? Well, some people wear gloves. I personally don't wear gloves unless I'm really going to mess my hands up. You're going to need your safety glasses if you're sawing or drilling above your head. You're going to need a tape measure and a carpenter's pencil or some way of marking the fascia. You're going to need some saw or some way of cutting the actual guttering itself. You're going to require a level, a spirit level for plumbing up your downpipes and stuff. You're going to need some kind of screwdriver or battery drill. You may even need to have a drill bit if they're drilling into something like a plastic fascia. You're going to need a string line and possibly a plumb line as well if you're working to a grid or some kind of outlet. And you will need screws. Now the best screws to use will be brass screws, but they're expensive. So you can use corrosion resistant screws or zinc plated or something like that, but make sure you use the correct screws what the manufacturer of the guttering says you need to use. The screws I recommend to use are 25mm long by 5 round head brass or zinc screws. Don't use countersunk screws because in heavy snow they could pull through the brackets. Other things you might need is a file to file the actual end of your cut, and possibly a silicone spray or a silicone grease to put on the rubber seal, which will help with the expansion and contraction of the guttering. So I think that's all you need. Now I've no Charlotte today, she's working. But I guess there's nothing worse than your wife telling you how to do your job, is it? Hopefully I can get it done before she gets home. Now I just thought, I haven't installed guttering since I was an apprentice. And I haven't taught guttering for at least the last 15 years. So I hope I know what I'm doing. Hopefully it'll come back to me. But I do remember the last time I did guttering, it was at the ex-Manchester United footballer Jimmy Nicholl, if you can remember that far back. and it was the first time I'd actually seen an FA Cup winners medal putting guttering around his garage. When my dad subbed me out to Toppings the Builders because he said I needed building experience. So let's get on with it and hopefully I can do it. Now, first thing I need to do is check and make sure I have installed the fascia level, because this will help me massively with my measuring. And as you can see, it's pretty much spot on. Now, the fall for guttering, if I can remember, is 1 in 350. So that means for every 1 metre we need to drop about 3.5 mil. This is 10 metres long, but I'm going to be putting the running outlet around here somewhere, because I'm putting the downpipe on this post, not on the end post. So it'll slope down to here, and then it'll slope down to here, hopefully. Now when you're working out your fall, also make sure that you've got no more than 50 mil showing of the fascia board really. Now my roof's going to come down a little bit more here, so I've got 65 mil here, but it's a 50 mil from the finished roof level, so I'm pretty much bang on 50 mil. This will stop driving rain getting down the back of the fascia. So first thing I need to do is work out where the bracket is going at that end, and when you are putting the brackets at the end, they need to be no closer than 150 mil to the stop end. So it's all coming back to me now, and I'm going to get another bracket then down here with the right measurement, put my string line across, and then I can put the brackets to each one. That's the plan. Now the roof is going to stick over the end of here, so the fascia's perfect for that. Now I've gone for the standard 110 mil half round guttering, so that means from this fascia the gutter will stick out about there, but my roof wants to go into round about the halfway point, so 55 mil, which is about there. So I've got to make sure when I put my first bracket in that I am going to allow for that slope, but because the pitch isn't that much, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So I'll probably from the top of the fascia come down 10 mil or so, and then it should be fine for the roof going into the guttering. Now I've got to do the guttering now because I've not put the roof on, because if I put the roof on then I wouldn't be able to do the guttering here properly. So that's why I'm doing it now without the roof on. So if you think I've gone stir crazy, you're probably right. Now the first clip is in place. Now you don't go right to the end of the fascia. You need to leave about 150 mil from the end of the guttering to again allow for the expansion and contraction. So I've drawn a line down from the fascia 10 mil, which is the same as the other one. And then I've worked out, because the length down there is 6 meters, a 1 in 350 would work out at 24 mil. So I've come 25 mil down, put a mark, so that's where the top of the bracket is, and then tied the string line to the center and run it all the way down there to the center of the bracket there. So all I have to do now is every meter interval is push the bracket up to the string like that, and then that should give me my fall, hopefully. Now I am spacing my brackets a meter apart, but they recommend if you live in a really snowy area, you might want to reduce these measurements to 600 mil rather than a meter, but it's pretty standard, brackets being a meter apart. So now I'm offering the gutter clip up to the string line. Now again, you could get your pencil out here and mark it, but it's just easy for me because I'm at the right height and the right level. I can just put the screw into the hole and using my impactor screw in the screw. Now don't go too mad with the screw because you might break the bracket. Now there's 3 holes in the gutter bracket. If you again live in a snowy area, you could use all 3 holes, but I'm just using the top hole and the bottom hole to secure the clip to the fascia. Now when you're connecting two pieces of guttering together, you need a straight connector. Now when you're putting the guttering on, you just push it in at the back and then it just clips in. But there is a little line here which you don't go past, because you need to allow for expansion and contraction. So even though the stop is in the centre, you allow 10 mil for this expansion and contraction. And you never glue a guttering. And this is why in the spring and the autumn months when the sun's shining on it, if your guttering's making a clicking noise or a cracking noise, then somebody's not allowed for the expansion joint. Also, when you're doing the downpipes, the water needs to go through this way and through there, not that way. So it doesn't fit into there, it goes into that way first, so the water's coming down this way. And again, no glue, no silicone, because this needs to be able to expand and contract up and down on the pipe. Hopefully that helps. Now this is how I cut guttering. Don't do that bending and slicing it with a Stanley knife, which I've seen on numerous YouTube videos, but anyway. So I measure what I need and I mark it. Then I use a square cut on a new piece of guttering. Put it onto the line. Make sure the guttering is there where it needs to be, and then just score around it with my pencil. But then I put the guttering on a piece of wood and then just use a wood saw. Start in the middle so I can see the line on both sides. And then hopefully, which we've got, a nice square cut. And once you've cut your incredibly straight edge, get yourself a file and just file off the rough edges. Then you won't damage the rubber when you come to put it in. So I just allowed for a bit of an overhang with the guttering, and now it runs through, and we just have to screw now the actual connector. Now I've put a screw in the middle here, which I can get at. Now I've got to move this pipe out of the way because there's a screw needs to go in here and a screw needs to go in there, and then that will be in the correct place for me. Now again, like the guttering, make sure on the downpipe you leave an expansion gap, and like I said before, you don't glue the fittings because it allows them to move up and down. Now the gap, they reckon 5 or 6 mil. I mainly leave the gap at the bottom, as you can see here, rather than the top, so it allows it to move up and down, and it looks better if you leave it at the bottom rather than the top. Now when you're doing the downpipe, you can see between the running outlet and this first swept elbow, you've got to put a piece of pipe in here. And like I said before, it slides in that way and then goes down that way and then again into that way. And then I put 3 brackets on, and then I've got a little shoe to direct it out of the way. So that's putting in the drain pipe. So, that's it all installed. Let's give it a test. So I've got one of Will's golf balls. Let's see what happens. Ooh, lost a bit of momentum in that big gap, doesn't it? Go on, ball, you can do it. It's going to lose more momentum when it gets to the other one. Oh, 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 will it make it? Ah, get in. Now I'll be very disappointed if he doesn't make this short run. But let's see. Easy peasy. So that's how I install guttering around my carport. Hopefully you've liked the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.